Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. PBOC liquidity boosts sentiment. A stalemate US fiscal talks. US-China tensions are leading risks analysis. http ntvforex.com News ID 738E8B817 2026 49:45 Equities in Asia kicked off the week on a mixed note. NBSP Nikkei 0.63% fell as the data showed the Japanese economy contracted 7.8% in the second quarter and 27.8% on annualized basis, the worst figures on record, as the pandemic took a heavy toll on consumption, capital expenditure, and exports. The industrial production recovered 1.9% MOM in June, slower than 2.7% expected by analysts after last month's 8.9% plunge. NBSP stay on top of the markets with Swissquota's News Amp analysis. NBSP the ASX 200 slid 0.69%. NBSP but Chinese stocks edged higher as the PBOC's Bank of China BOC injected 700 billion yuan worth of medium-term lending facility MLF loans at 2.95% for the fourth month. The amount of new fund injection exceeded the total 550 billion yuan of past 2 months. NBSP the excess Chinese liquidity wet investors saw appetite and somewhat relieved the negative pressure on US equity futures, pushing the Dow 0.37%. S&P 0.30% and Nasdaq futures 0.44% higher after a mixed Friday close. But the stalemate fiscal talks in the US will likely weigh on the investor sentiment, as the next US fiscal boost will not see the daylight in the coming weeks, with the Senate adjourned until early September. NBSP Meanwhile, talks between the US and Chinese officials over the Phase 1 trade deal that were supposed to take place last week were postponed. The delay in talks is worrying about the future of the trade deal, but soothing to some extent, provided that a delayed meeting is better than the worst-case scenario of a ruptured agreement. With Donald Trump increasing pressure on China as a part of his election campaign, there is little hope to get anything good out of the next round of talks anyway. So, no news is good news. NBSP as a result, uncertainties regarding the U.S. next fiscal aid package and deteriorating U.S.-China relations are the major downside risks to the U.S. equities and the short-term investor appetite. NBSP FTSE futures 0.07% hint at a lackluster start in London. NBSP the U.S. 10-year yield is now above the 0.70% mark, the highest in 2 months, and the U.S. dollar is mostly steady against its major peers. Investors watch how the market absorbs the US 3 and 6-month bill auction today, after the 30-year bond sale saw limited demand last week. Weak demand should encourage a further rise across the US yield curve. NBSP gold remained bid above the $1,930 per ounce, but investors remain in a wait-and-see mode following the severe downside correction that dragged the price of an ounce by up to $200 last week. The recovery in U.S. yields should also limit the appetite in the yellow metal as investors now question whether there is potential for sustainable gains above the $2,000 per ounce. Given the mixed feelings, gold could not be a go-to-hedge in case of renewed risk-off pressures across the global markets. The critical support to the medium-term positive trend stands at $1,845 per ounce. A move below this level should point at a bearish trend reversal and pave the way for a deeper downside correction towards the $1,500 per ounce NBSP. With gold looking momentarily out of the race, the Swiss franc is where investors seek refuge. The USD is under an increased downside pressure, but the Swiss National Bank SNB will likely step in to prevent the franc from strengthening further. NBSP the direction in Eurust and GBP remains mostly determined by the US dollar appetite. But given the overstretched long positions in both the euro and the pound against the greenback, the risks remain tilted to the downside. NBSP WTI crude is still at the make or break level near $43 per ounce, its 200-day moving average. Bulls remain optimistic that, though revised to the downside, the recovery in global oil demand would continue giving support the market. Yet, a demand-focused advance is somewhat of a wishful thinking given the rising COVID cases and uncertainties regarding the pace of the global economic recovery. Hence, inability to break above the 200-day moving average could trigger a medium-term slide towards the $40 mark and below. NBSP we have a light economic calendar at the start of the week. Investors will watch the Empire State Manufacturing Index on Monday and the Reserve Bank of Australia's RBA meeting minutes on Tuesday. NBSP. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://m.me/mt5.expert.advisors.